We have Christ weeping over Jerusalem. How often would I have gathered you, but you would not? So God goes down, and out of the billions, he picks up a couple of thousand. And I don't think that you could imagine that he really wants all of them to be saved. He carries out some of them now. So I think we're getting to the big issue.
Dave, you said something similar to what you just said, and that is this. Jesus weeps over Jerusalem. How often would I have gathered you together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but ye would not. Christ could not state more clearly that he truly wants to bless them and that they have rejected him, but Calvinism changes the whole picture. If they are totally depraved, then they can't believe in him unless he causes them to do so through irresistible grace. So would I and ye would not for the Calvinist really mean I would not and ye could not. You just cited Matthew 23:37 the same way, but if you'll look at your Bible, Dave, the citation in the article is in error. First, I don't know where it says he's weeping over Jerusalem, but secondly, your rendition says, how often would I have gathered you? But the text says, how often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you would not. And one of the reasons I point this out is that I believe this passage is frequently misused. And in fact, I sent the Potter's Freedom up to you. You'll notice there's a chapter in there called The Big Three. And that's because Norman Geisler in his book, Chosen But Free, which I was responding to, cites Matthew 23:37, 2 Peter 3:9, and 1 Timothy 2:4 over and over and over again in the course of the book. And one of the problems is that Matthew 23:37a is not a soteriological passage. It's not a passage talking about how men can be saved. It's not discussing the abilities of man. It is instead, secondly, a passage that is in condemnation to the Jewish leaders. The entire passage, beginning all the way back in Matthew 23 at the very beginning, talks about the scribes and Pharisees. Verse 13 says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from people, for you do not enter in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. This is the same thing here, that these men have resisted the work of God all along. And the most important thing is, in verse 37, is that the ones that it says Jesus wanted to gather, even if you take that to be soteriological, that is, I wanted to save them, even if you take that out of context, it's not the same people who are unwilling. The ones who are unwilling are the Jewish leaders. It's their children, those who are under them, that Jesus wants to gather. And the condemnation is the Jewish leaders are standing in Jesus' way. So I found it interesting that both the last time you just read it and then in the article, it was changed, but I'm sure it's just typographical error, but how often would I have gathered you together, but you would not? That's not what Jesus said in Matthew 23.
Yes, well, you ask first of all when he weeps. Luke 19:41. When he came near, he beheld the city and wept over it.
Okay.
Saying, if thou hadst known, even thou at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, and now they're hid from thine eyes. He's talking about all of Jerusalem.
Well, the destruction of Jerusalem there, but here in Matthew 23, there's no mention of that. Yeah. But that's just secondary.
But James,
Matthew chapter 23, you said in your article, Christ could not state more clearly that he truly wants to bless them and that they have rejected him. And one of the statements that you made in briefly responding to Matthew chapter 23 was that, it doesn't really matter if it's two different groups here, that Jerusalem is all the people of Jerusalem. And so the idea is still that there's this unwillingness on their part. God tries, but they're unwilling, and that's why they're not gathered. And if you recall, what I had said to you was there's two different groups in view here. The ones who are unwilling are not the ones that Jesus says he's trying to draw, that he's trying to gather together, that instead this is a parallel to Matthew 23:13, and that in point of fact, this is, I think, a reference to the deity of Christ, as you said, because you have this statement on Jesus' part, how often I wanted to gather your children together, and you were unwilling. That is, the Jewish leaders who have been attacked throughout the passage, They were the ones who were unwilling that the Lord would minister to those who were under their authority.